my name is Dr. Olivia Moses, and welcome to Wellness Live, brought to you by Loma Linda University Health's Living Whole Wellness Program. We are now in January, so I would like to wish each of you Happy New Year. With the new year, a lot of times we think about losing weight, and we make resolutions to do so. We sometimes don't wait till the new year. Sometimes this is on your birthday or whenever, but have you ever been to the point where you make the decision and say, I am going to start losing weight, and then you look at a program or a diet to start? Well, all diets are not created equal, and then we can maybe even talk about that term diet. But how do we keep our resolutions, and are there diets out there or popular diets out there that we just need to tell you the truth about? Well, I have a very special guest today. Her name is Caitlin McKee. She is a registered dietitian for the Living Whole program, and she is going to be talking about resolutions and debunking popular diets.
Some of the learning objectives for tonight's presentation are understanding the risk factors for obesity, identifying how healthy approaches to weight loss differ from popular diets, understanding behaviors that contribute to weight loss and weight management long term, and understanding the relationship between physical activity and weight loss. I want to start with some statistics. Did you know that approximately 2 out of 3 Americans are either overweight or obese? Overweight and obesity increases the risk of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, among many other diseases. Weight gain between 2 and 12 years of age predicts future weight gain later on in life, which I find really interesting. And a lot of things can affect weight gain over the course of a lifetime. Things such as environment, which includes home environment or work environment, lifestyle, genetics, age, and family history. Even a modest amount of weight loss of 3 to 5% can have a really big impact on someone's health overall. So for someone that is 250 pounds, if they lost 12 to 15 pounds, they could see some health benefits from that amount of weight loss. And unfortunately, 95% of people who lose weight regain it back in less than 5 years. I want to talk about some of the popular diets out there today. The first one I want to mention is the paleo diet and gluten-free. Some people could argue that these diets are actually lifestyles, and for some they are, but a lot of people are trying these diets short-term for weight loss purposes or other reasons, with really no evidence backing the reason of why they're trying them. Cleanses, juicing, and detoxes have been popular for a while and are holding steady. Low carb and high protein still remains very popular. And also we've seen something called the HCG diet, which is a physician-run program that does not have research supporting evidence showing that it can produce long-term weight loss. The National Weight Control Registry puts out some statistics from data that they've collected from over 10,000 individuals that have lost 30 pounds or more and kept it off successfully, which is considered 1 year or more. So these people have some common behaviors that they do. 78% of them eat breakfast every day. 75% weigh themselves approximately once a week. 62% watch less than 10 hours of TV per week, and 90% of them are exercising an average of an hour a day. So these are things that if you are looking for long-term weight loss, we know that these behaviors are working for people who have done it and are successful in keeping it off. Some of the risk factors for overweight and obesity you can change, and others you cannot. So things like a poor diet or a sedentary lifestyle, those are things that you have control over. Something such as age or family history of overweight and obesity, you do not have control over. Your environment, you may or may not be able to control some aspects of your environment. Things that you do at work or at home, you may not have a say over, but for the most part, people can control a portion of their environment. So I want to talk about some steps to managing your weight. The first one is to set goals that are realistic and reasonable. So in my practice, we use what's called SMART goals, and those goals should be specific, measurable, attainable, time-oriented, and results-oriented and time-defined. So an example of a good SMART goal would be something like, I will take my lunch to work 3 days this week. Or I will drink only water and no other beverage with breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next week. So often when people are looking to diets to give them help or structure, they may not necessarily even be setting any goals at all. It may just be the goal just to follow the plan strictly. But what happens when you have something come up and aren't able to stick to the plan? Is that considered falling off the wagon, or are you considered a failure and not meeting the guidelines of the diet? So it's important when you're starting a diet to ask yourself, are the plans or rules associated or suggested by the diet realistic to you and your lifestyle and your schedule? Number 2 is to focus on balanced nutrition, on reduced calorie intake and balanced nutrition. So yes, a calorie deficit is needed in order to lose weight, and that ideally we want it to come from a combination of reduced calorie intake and also exercise combined together to help you lose weight. But it's actually the adherence to a diet, not the diet themselves, that make the difference. So anyone who is following a particular program and is consistent on that program, as long as they're taking in less calories, they are going to see weight loss unless there's some other medical issue that's happening. So it's not necessarily what you're eating on the diet, it's that you're following a program long term. Unfortunately, a lot of diets aren't sustainable long term. So it's important to keep your calorie limit in mind when you're deciding what to eat and drink, and plan meals and snacks ahead of time, whether you're following a diet or just trying to eat healthy. And also you want to eat foods that are nutrient dense, so they're full of volume and fill your stomach up, so things like fruit and vegetables that are also low in calories. Number 3 is really important. Get regular physical activity. We saw in the statistics of people who have lost weight and kept it off that 90% of them are exercising for at least an hour a day most days of the week. How much exercise does it actually take to lose weight though? For moderate weight loss with a change in diet or decreased calorie intake is approximately 30 to 45 minutes 5 days a week. And then for significant weight loss, you're going to need to be exercising between 45 and 90 minutes about 5 days a week, and also watching your nutrition, because you can't out-exercise a bad diet. No matter how hard you're working in the gym, you still need to be mindful of your nutrition and what you're taking in. And then resistance training should absolutely be a part of your exercise regimen. It can be included in the 45 or 30 minutes that you're doing every day, but at least 2 sessions per week that are 20 minutes long is really important to keep your bones healthy and your muscles strong and improve your balance or maintain your balance. So you don't necessarily have to lift weights or go to a gym to get resistance training. You can do body weight exercises, you can use resistance bands, do things that are more convenient than necessarily going to a gym. Like I mentioned, again, people who lose weight and keep it off exercise consistently. Diets that don't mention exercise or promote physical activity should raise a red flag. Number 4 is to eat regularly throughout the day. So I would suggest that everybody eat a balanced breakfast. It gives you energy for the day, and it can also help you from overeating later on in the day, trying to make up for breakfast. Also, eat every 3 to 4 hours. It's important, even if it's just something small, a piece of fruit or a small snack, to kind of not delay eating until you're too hungry and then going to take in a large amount of food. Make healthy food the convenient choice by planning ahead and having food and snacks ready. And then also it helps to combine food with protein and fiber in it, and that's going to help you feel full longer and give you more satisfaction, because it slows the digestion and emptying from the stomach into the intestines. Number 5, this is extremely important. You need to be tracking your intake. If you're interested in making dietary improvements or losing weight, it's important to know first what your calorie needs are. And some of the apps out there that are popular now and free can help you in determining your calorie needs. But typically, women to lose weight need about 12 to 1,500 calories a day, and men need about 1,500 to 1,800 calories a day. So something like MyFitnessPal, or even just keeping a handwritten log on paper and pen, can really help you identify identify some places where you can make improvements or look at some changes.
Now's the time for you to actually type in questions. We would love to ask Caitlin here live questions directly from you. But we have some already here, Caitlin. And so one of the things about tracking your diet, which a lot of people, when you bring up tracking, it's like, oh, why do I have to do this? So one of the questions is, why is tracking important, and how do I make it worth my time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So like you mentioned, a lot of people are a little bit resistant to tracking. It does take time, but it is absolutely worth your time. If you take the time to write your food down or log it somewhere, you can then look back and identify patterns. Maybe you're eating differently on the weekend compared to the weekday, or maybe you can adjust your timing of some foods to give you more satisfaction and ultimately, leave you feeling fuller longer.
Mm-hmm. And what we do notice, correct me if I'm wrong, Caitlin, is that when we actually write down or take note of what we're eating, we pay more attention, so it actually reduces what we're eating as well.
Yep.
Okay, another question that we have here is talking about fasting. And we're talking about debunking popular diets here, and people sometimes use fasting, intermittent fasting, according to the question, intermittent fasting. Can you tell us about the positive and negative effects and what your thoughts are on intermittent fasting?
Sure. Intermittent fasting has probably some controversy on both sides. I think it could potentially be beneficial, although I wouldn't recommend it for someone that is an athlete or a diabetic who needs to have regular blood sugar levels all day. Someone who's intermittently fasting, maybe eating a large amount of calories in the morning, maybe 1,000 calories, and then going potentially 8 hours until their next meal and eating another 1,000 calories in the evening. No matter what you eat or how much you eat at a particular time, it needs to be healthy food. So intermittent fasting or not, that person still needs to be conscious of their intake.
Okay. And then another question we have here is, when you look at diets, a lot of diets are reducing the amount of a specific food. So whether it is fruit or grains or that type of thing, what are your thoughts on those kinds of diets? And what would those diets be called?
Sure. So there are some instances such as vegetarianism or veganism where cutting out foods may actually be more of a benefit rather than something that causes harm. But in the case of something like, for example, Atkins, where you're cutting out entire food groups, entire carbohydrate groups such as fruits and fruits mainly, maybe some vegetables, and also dairy or grains, that can really have an impact on the nutrients that you're taking in, such as fiber.
Now tell us a little bit about cleanses. So how long should a person cleanse? Do people need cleansing? Because that's happening a lot, about asking about the research of, doesn't your body need to actually flush itself from toxins?
There's really no research that supports that a cleanse or a detox is actually removing any particular toxins from your body. So I wouldn't recommend doing a cleanse or a detox for even one day. I don't see the benefit of it. I think it's great that when people are doing that, they may be increasing fruit and veggie intake and decreasing processed foods, but I don't see the benefit of doing something for a day or 3 days or a week even, because long term it doesn't give you any benefit.
Okay, great. And then another thing that we talked about here is that the tracking. So I want to get back to the tracking. Are there specific apps or something to help so they don't have to take around a journal with them all the time that you would recommend?
Yeah, I really like to use MyFitnessPal. It's free. It's available on all smartphones, and also just you can go to the website, myfitnesspal.com. It lets you put in all your own information, such as your weight and your height and your activity level, and it gives you an estimated calorie need. And then you can use their database and pull foods that you typically eat and kind of take a look at them in a broader picture.
Okay. So then the last question here before we let you get back to the rest of your presentation is, what if I have tried to lose weight over and over and over again, and I feel like I've been successful, and then I have to lose the same amount of pounds over again, or I'm losing the same 10 or 15, 20, 30, 50 pounds over and over again? What would be your advice to that person?
Yeah, and that's the case with a lot of people. That is not uncommon. My advice is don't give up. This has to be a long-term lifestyle change. So look back in the past at what you had done and not succeeded with. So if you had tried something in the past and weren't successful, it's probably not a good idea to try that again. A lot of people will repeat diets a number of times and expect different results. Ultimately, it has to be something that works for you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And don't forget to type in your questions for Caitlin, but I'll let you get back to the rest of your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. So we're going to continue from tracking your intake to tracking your progress. Not only is it important to write down or log what you eat if you're trying to identify areas of improvement, but it could also help if someone takes your measurements. Weigh in weekly. I think that's an appropriate schedule to weigh in. No one needs to do it multiple times a day or even every other day. In fact, taking progress pictures can be really helpful because a lot of times someone who looks in the mirror every day may not notice some of the changes that are happening to their body composition, even when they don't see a whole lot of changes on the scale. We can look quite different. Measuring fitness improvements such as increases in flexibility, increases in strength, better performance as far as cardiovascular fitness, those are all things that are just as important as weight loss. Number 7 is to focus on lifestyle changes. So I would want my client or the person that I'm working with to identify some of the places where they can make lifelong changes, lasting changes. For example, can you cut out caloric beverages? Are you drinking any calories? That's typically one of the first places where I would say we could make an adjustment and have some noticeable improvements. Reevaluate portion sizes. A lot of us, myself included, suffer from portion distortion. We eyeball portions and we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and don't always account for the actual amount of food that we're eating, and sometimes we just nibble and just don't even think about it. So plan meals and snacks ahead of time to reduce mindless eating so that you know how much you can eat and you're having some kind of structure with your intake. Compare food labels when shopping. And also reduce fast food and eating out. It's better to make, like I said, the healthy choice, the convenient choice, than having to rely on going through a drive-through or even running into a gas station. So when you're trying to make lifestyle changes or even considering going on a diet, I think it's important to ask yourself, or these are questions actually that I get asked, can a diet actually help jumpstart me making lifestyle changes? People will justify that if I try this cleanse for 10 days or 2 weeks and I see some progress, I'll be really, really motivated and I'll stick with it. But the research shows again and again and again that those do not produce long-term weight loss. So I would not try to jumpstart weight loss by using any particular method that's not something you're going to stick with long-term. Number 8 is don't drink your calories. This is extremely important. Americans are getting more calories from sugar-sweetened beverages than any other beverage. Sugar-sweetened beverages provide very little, if any, nutrition, and they really don't give us the feelings of satisfaction or fullness that food would. So rather than drinking a smoothie or fruit juice, you should get your nutrition and your calories from the actual food itself. An alternative to some of these beverages, which we may not even think as being unhealthy, would be something like water with some citrus in it or some kind of fruit. You could use frozen berries and put them in your water to give it a little bit of flavor. And there are also some seltzer waters out there that are flavored that have no sweeteners, no colors, no additives at all. So that could be a good option as well. Number 9 is to manage your triggers. And this is something that is not often addressed with diets and popular programs out there. They usually say this is what you should be doing, give you a prescription for either food or exercise, and then kind of leave you on your own. So they often don't address the reasons why people are eating. So even if you had yourself set up for success, there are going to be things that happen over the course of the week or your journey on your weight loss months, years, that are going to kind of deter you. And those things could be things that we don't plan for, like stress. It's important to manage your stress and take time for yourself every day. Time management is absolutely critical when trying to lose weight. You need to plan ahead and be prepared, especially with exercise or with meals, or if you know you have a particularly busy day. Emotional support is really, really important as well. Getting support from family or friends or coworkers can make a really big difference when you're feeling a lack of motivation or just like you feel like giving up. Your environment, like I talked about earlier, some of the things in your environment you can control and others you cannot. So it's important, if you know some of the things that trigger you or have identified certain foods, to keep those out of sight so that you can avoid overeating in a particular situation if you got stressed or extra busy. And then the last one is to get support. It's always better to try and reach your goals with the help of other people. Verbalize your goals. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. You're going to be more likely to achieve those goals if you talk about them with other people. You could also join a structured weight loss program. There are programs out there that are absolutely sound and are good approaches. We have a program here at Loma Linda called the Say Now program that is available to employees and their covered spouses if they have risk management insurance. But you're not necessarily just limited to that. There's a lot of other resources out there. And like I mentioned, it's important to share your goals with others. So to summarize, some of these strategies for long-term lasting weight maintenance or weight loss is to set goals that are realistic and reasonable, to focus on reduced calorie intake and balanced nutrition, so the quality of the food you're eating, not just the number of calories, to get regular physical activity, somewhere between 30 minutes and 90 minutes most days of the week. Eat regularly throughout the day so that you're not delaying eating by trying to save calories for another time later in the day. Track your intake using MyFitnessPal or an app or some kind of handwritten method. Track your progress using pictures, measurements, fitness gains, and focus on lifestyle changes, not just hitting a number on the scale. The actual behavior changes are far more important than what the scale says. Don't drink your calories. That is extremely important. And then also manage your triggers and get support. And I want to talk briefly about some programs that we have here at Loma Linda. The Unstuck Program is a free program that is available to employees and spouses that are covered through risk management. It's an 8-week program, and the group meetings focus on the change process, goal setting, barriers to change, nutrition, exercise, stress management, and ultimately setting the participant up with a plan of action to meet their goals going forward. The Say Now program, like I mentioned, is our Say No to Overweight program, and that is also available to all employees and spouses covered through risk management. This is a 12-week weight loss program, and there are group meetings and also individual interactions with a registered dietitian. And in the groups, we're focusing on goal setting, behavior and lifestyle change, self-monitoring, and also using weekly weigh-ins to monitor progress.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for this presentation, and thank you for typing in your questions. And we have a lot here, so please keep them coming, and we're going to be asking Caitlin some of them. So here's a really great question from someone, Caitlin. How often should someone weigh themselves?
I would recommend weighing yourself approximately once a week. Some people may be comfortable doing it a little bit more, and some people may be a little bit less, but there is definitely no need to weigh multiple times in a day, which I've seen some clients do, but you want to be doing it on a regular schedule. That's the most important part.
Okay, great. Another great question here is there any detriment to inconsistent weight management or yo-yo dieting?
I think the detriment first is going to be the frustration of it and just feeling like you're not being successful over and over again and asking yourself, is it me? What am I doing wrong? Because a lot of people think it can't be the diet. This program works. They said it works. I've seen other people do it and it works for them. And everybody's different. I would just say skip the diets and focus on the lifestyle change and don't get frustrated. It's a lifelong, it's a marathon.
Mm-hmm. An interesting thing you mentioned here in your presentation, Caitlin, was regarding stress and emotions. And a lot of times when it comes to dieting or weight loss, we focus heavily on the diet and the exercise, like you mentioned. So what are some things, or what would a person who has issues with the emotions, how could they identify themselves as someone who is emotional eating?
One thing that they could do is actually maybe write down some notes, or with a food journal, kind of write down how they're feeling after a meal or even at the end of the day, just to check in frequently, and then later go back and review those things. You can make a note and say, I was stressed on this day, and then identify kind of some of the behaviors that were surrounding that incident. Just looking back over time can really help with that.
And can we say that emotional eating doesn't always have to happen when you're sad? It can happen on the other extreme as well,
Absolutely.
Correct? And weight gain can happen there. Here's another question of, I have a lot of friends who are doing the paleo diet combined with other things. If they combine it with other things, does that make it a balanced or healthy meal or a healthy diet?
Okay, so I would consider that maybe paleo-ish. So cutting out some food groups like grains, dairy, beans. Some paleo people choose to include one or multiple of those things, but don't go back to the full conventional American diet. I think that people can eat paleo and still be very well balanced and meet all their nutrient needs, but they have to be very consistent, and they need to pay attention to how they're feeling and really know what their goals are.
Okay. So here's another question. When people are reducing the calorie intake, which most diets are trying to have you do, and you mentioned calories here, is there something that is too low? And what would make that number not good for you?
Everybody's body is a little bit different. A general rule is that you need to be eating at least 1,200 calories, because based on that number of calories, you're able to get in your vitamins, minerals, calcium, and when people tend to go lower than that, it's easy to start missing out on some of those things. If someone were to go lower, I think they would need to be under the supervision of a doctor or a medically supervised weight loss program. That's not uncommon, but just to really keep a close eye and not be intentionally under eating as a method to lose weight.
So basically you're saying that because you're on a diet doesn't mean you need to be malnourished.
Absolutely.
And you have to still worry about those kinds of things. Okay, so another one here is, what is a good source to identify what a balanced diet actually consists of?
As dietitians, we typically use what's called MyPlate, and that is from the United States Department of Agriculture. So if you go to USDA.gov, they use a team of experts from all different health-related fields, and they come up with guidelines for what is considered a balanced diet. So typically we want to see half of someone's plate be fruits and vegetables, something with color, a quarter of the plate be lean protein, and then the other quarter be some kind of complex carbohydrates or whole grain.
Okay. So everyone is a diet expert. That's what you get a lot of advice when you start this process. How can you manage all of these different messaging that you're getting? So how can we differentiate what is true and what is not true?
It's very challenging right now to determine what is true and what's not true. I would suggest getting your information not from friends who know little about nutrition, but from peer-reviewed sources such as a government website or a professional in the field of nutrition, such as a registered dietitian. That's a good place to start.
Okay. And then why don't we ask this last question about, if there were 2 or 3 things that would give me the biggest bang for my buck, what would they be in weight loss?
The first thing I would say would be to set a goal, know what you want to achieve, because if you don't have that, you won't know how to get there. Number 2, I would say log your food, no matter what, no matter how much time it takes, no matter how resistant someone is to food journaling, it makes a huge difference. And number 3, I would be consistent with exercise.
Okay, so a quick sneak question in there about the exercise. How can you motivate, or how can we stay motivated with exercise?
I really like exercising in a group with other people. Sometimes when you feel like you just don't want to be there, or you can't push yourself, or you have a lot of other things on your mind, and you work out with other people, you can really feed off of their energy, and that personally motivates me.
Okay, great. Well, Caitlin, again, thank you so much about talking with us about weight management today, because this is a topic that really affects most of us. And hopefully you gained some truth here today with our registered dietitian here from the Living Whole program. And we want to thank you for joining us here on Wellness Live. And please join us next month for our next session. And you can actually see this presentation and share it with your friends archived very shortly. So come back to our website and check, and we will have all of this right here with you. Again, my name is Dr. Olivia Moses, and thank you for joining us for Wellness Live.